That I love the fact that you have mentioned fun, because then that comes this dimension of gamification of the action. So we have two things that we may want to try. One, if we have said that in order to do a new habit, you have to make it easier, this time you have to make it more difficult in order to get rid of the habit.
Welcome to Play It by Your Rules, the podcast for those tired of living by somebody else's script and ready to live and lead on their terms. I'm your host, Maggie Rombach, coach, speaker, and strategist. I'm here to spark a little rebel energy and leave you with a sense of possibility. Each episode, I'll talk to leaders, adventurers, experts, and changemakers who found their way. Some loud and bold, others quiet and intentional. You'll walk away with fresh insights, inspiration, and practical tools to chart your next chapter. If you're craving more freedom, flow, and fun, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Play It by Your Rules. I'm Maggie, your host. And Play It by Your Rules is my call to mindful rebellion, to find your voice, to claim your space. And today, as we're nearing the end of the year, I think it's a great moment to look back and look at our year, what we achieved, and maybe set intentions for the new year and resolutions. And some of them stick and some of them don't. So we're talking about behavior. So I'm super excited to have Ivan with us today, who knows all about behavioral science. So we'll get really into the neuroscience of why some habits stick and some don't. So before we dive into the substance, Ivan, I'll give you right the word to introduce yourself. Who are you and what mission are you on?
Maggie, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to your podcast. The other thing is that when I look at the name of your podcast, that where there is this idea of mindful rebellion, I think behavioral science is all about mindful rebellion. It's about breaking something, some beliefs that at one moment society, our parents have put in our head regarding how do we change, and that's going to be the core topic of what we are going to be discussing today. Oh,
I
now
love it already. So I'll have the neuroscience back up why it's important to break limiting beliefs. Fantastic.
now let me get back, and I have a tendency to always divert to whatever you are asking, Maggie. You have to be patient with me. Let me get back about the point that you asked about myself. I grew up in Latin America until the age of 15, and then suddenly I appear in Switzerland. Beautiful country. In fact, specifically, I would say that the place that I call home is this part of Canton de Vaud that is really in the boonies with the small little towns. This is my place. This is where I really, for the first time, I feel at home. Even when I was in beautiful Geneva, I didn't feel so much at home. So I lived in Geneva. I lived a little bit in Lausanne. I studied engineering in Lausanne. I I was lucky enough to get jobs that were quite rewarding, especially when you are young and you want to discover the world. These guys, they moved me around in several countries. So I have been living in the Middle East. I have been living a little bit in Spain. I have been living a little bit in the Eastern Europe side. And that was amazing because it was a great company. Perks would be a kind of a dream. And that was the life that I was living, but it wasn't my life. Like many, I was super unhappy. And it has nothing to do with the perks. It's when you know that what you are doing is not matching the person that you wanted to be, there is something that breaks in you and makes you a little bit more um, lazy, a little bit slow in the way of processing things. And that's what happened 7 years ago when I had a burnout. And when we say a burnout, is when we say you break, your brain is frozen for a couple of months. You cannot do much of the things that you wanted to do. And basically, I think I lost touch with myself. So, and it was also an opportunity, basically, because I this was the time of reconsideration about what do I need to change in my life. So I have devoted since that time my life to build knowledge, specifically about how to help companies drive sustainable change, why it doesn't work. And remember, I say that I studied engineering, so I know shit about human psychology. I knew shit. That means that I had to learn from scratch. I'm a nerd, a geek, so I love reading. So I had to read a lot of research. I had to hang around with people who were experts in the field of human psychology, and especially the part where there is an organizational impact. So the first biggest challenge that I had to deal with, and maybe the reason why I went into that direction, is myself, because I had to get my shit together after burnout in order to manage it. And I wanted to open a parenthesis here because burnout is not something that you heal, that you get rid of. It's just shelf. You have to manage it because it will appear at any moment. So if you don't continue managing, you go back to the old bad habits that you had. Um,
So even I want to jump in there because there's already so much. I just want to point to a few things that I think already really deep. Because I actually had two burnouts, and only after the second one I worked with a psychologist to find the patterns in my teenage years. So I now think I broke those patterns. But as you say, I think it's just really important because I know many people are either heading towards burnout or they're just really tired. So I think what you said is really important to, first of all, really take that as an opportunity to pause and go inwards and allow ourselves the space to heal and to reorient. So I think that's really important. The other bit I wanted to just dig deeper and challenge you because I think or not necessarily challenge, but understand better, because I'm more and more getting convinced that our priorities change in our chapters of our lives.
mhm.
So, because you said you realized you weren't your work wasn't really aligned with who you were. But do you think it wasn't aligned with who you have always been or who you were at that point in your life? You know what I mean by that? So maybe you had the perfect engineering job for the first 10, 15 years of your life. And then there was just, you just evolved, right? And at one point, it wasn't the right job anymore. So how
Mm.
does that resonate?
So it is an evolution. You are right. It cannot be fixed. The person that I was when I was 15 and I was arriving to Switzerland, it is not the person that I was at 25 when I started working, 24 maybe, today. There is an evolution. But here is the trick, is that if we don't do the regular check-in about what are we today, what is our priority today, this is where shit happens
Yeah.
because we need to be aligned at any time with the core values that we have in our life. And in order to avoid that life puts you in the flow and then you cannot swim back, it's going to be harder and harder unless you stop what you're doing wrong.
Wow. So this is already amazing and really deep. So that's when your reconversion happened and you really got curious about behavioral science. So for our listeners, can you just explain a little bit more? What is it? So what's behind that concept?
Mm. So the thing is that we all believe that humans are perfectly rational robots. So if you explain me you have to eat healthier, uh, I will understand it. And then I will do the change that is required because I have understood. But the problem is that we are not by far uh, perfect or perfectly rational. Most of our brain is managed by emotions, which means that in our brain there is some part of our brains who wants to do less efforts possible in order to get to where we want to be.
Hmm.
So this irrational part of our brain is the one that is constantly managing our brain. That's why, and it's sometimes good because we need to take decisions super fast sometimes. when there is a danger. For instance, if my daughter is crossing the street and I don't have to overthink. I just know that I have to pull her out if there is a car passing. So this is good. The irrational part, that's what makes us human. But in most of the cases, 90%, 80% of our time, we are on that autopilot mode. We are not constantly reflecting. So, and behavioral science is simply the study of why we humans are so bad at doing the things we know we should do. That's a very nice way to explain it. So by understanding certain patterns of your brain, and by the way, it's not big science. I was amazed that if you can summarize the principles of behavioral science or the principles of how the brain takes some decisions, you have up to 10 and it can be summarized in small sentences. You don't need to know what molecule is acting, who is moving around in your brain. You need just to understand maybe up to 10 principles about how the brain is reacting, why when when we believe that we can achieve something just by having this willingness or this motivation to do it, that is going to happen, but in reality it never happens. That if we understand these principles, we can use it in order to tame our brain. It doesn't mean that you are not going to be irrational. You need that, but you can do things by design because you wanted it. And that's what breaks our balls as humans, because we believe that thing, that effort or motivation, and then things can happen. Bullshit.
So I want to have those 10 principles. I don't know if you have a write-up or somewhere where you can, or newsletter where you talked about it, where I can send listeners to, because I want to know. Because what I do know, and I'm sure you read that book too, but it's Daniel Kahneman, I think, Thinking Slow, Thinking Fast, which
Yes.
I think is also great because it puts it into system 1 and system B. So basically, essentially simplifies it, saying you have the rational brain and the automated brain, and you have to be aware when which brain kicks in. And
Mm,
once you're aware, that already helps.
mm. That, by the way, that was an amazing book, and you have to get the willingness to finish it because it's super long.
It took me, I think, a year. I also have this habit to read 2 or 3 books at the same time. And especially that one was quite heavy to read. But, I read it bit by bit. So yeah, once you're done, you're like, wow, this is so great. But yes, it's a piece of work to get there.
Listen, Maggie, I don't know if I'm capable of, because I was saying 10 principles, but I didn't even think about the 10 principles, but I can give you a couple of them. So our brain is lazy. So that means that the less energy we consume in order to do an action, the better it is for the brain. That means that it has an impact on why we do certain things and why we don't do others. Like, for instance, if something is super difficult to be done, then we are not going to do it. The effort itself, or even thinking about the effort, is going to be a painful exercise, and that will limit you in your capacity to continue doing what you should be doing. So we say the lazy brain. The core emotions that drive our decisions is fear and pleasure. They are the basic ones. They are anchored in the inner part of our brain in order to protect us. And by the way, the same things happens with animals that comes from the, like, you take a crocodile, he will react in the same way, because crocodiles are old animals. Let's call it like, not less uh, went into less evolution than, I don't know, dogs, for instance. But they have that. They have the reaction. So whenever we see a signal that it means fear, we are going to take the decision to escape. And whenever there is something that is pleasurable, like eating chocolate, having sex, well, then let's do it, right?
Mm.
And we want, that's the second principle: pleasure and fear.
And I guess, and you mentioned we're not going to get into molecules, but I guess that's also then where hormones are triggered that reinforce that, because then it triggers you have like endorphin, adrenaline, oxytocin, whatever you get, but you get those molecules that then reinforce it, that you have these great emotions when you get it, or the bad emotions when you're under fear, right?
Exactly. But I want to avoid to name any. By the way, in the engineering, I study chemistry and biotechnology. So that means that these molecules and even know how to draw it. But what's the point when the principles are a
Yes, much
little bit
simpler. Yeah.
exactly. So so we were talking about pleasure and fear. Now, our brain, the principle number three, I'm just inventing the order, by the way. Principle number three is that our brain doesn't distinguish between reality and fiction. That's why when we are watching a, let's South American telenovela and there is something sad, we
Mm.
start like tearing a little bit. Our brain doesn't believe that, doesn't know if it is something is real or not. Um, and
That's
it's
also why
funny.
visualization is so powerful, right?
That's the point where I wanted to
Sorry,
go.
I
No,
listen.
no,
I
no.
just listen.
That's perfect because when you are creating this bait for the brain where you want to be or what change you want to have, you cannot just say, I want to lose weight. You have to imagine the thing. Imagine the thing not only in terms of colors, image, but also about feelings that you may have. How does it look like? Ivan losing 5 kilos. How am I going to feel? What are the colors around? We need to be able to anchor things in our brain, not only with a sentence, but also with an image and emotions around it. Because the more you add uh, complexity of emotions, the more anchor is going to be in your brain. It's not going to be like a sentence that when we have an exam, we memorize it and then we forget about it. It's going to be more difficult to forget. So, and as you said, we can call it visualization. But it's a visualization like a small movie that you put in your head so that your brain is going to accept it, put it in a place where it's not going to be removed in a not in a temporary place. The fourth principle I would say is about this the neural pathways. That means that if you repeat a behavior several times, the more is going to be automatically produced without any friction about of thinking. And, and Maggie, think about it. Sometimes we drive from the office to our home, and we don't even realize all the complexity of movement that we are doing while driving, because it has become with the time it has become a little bit more normal. So we are sometimes we drive 30 minutes and we don't the time pass and we did maybe thousands of movement with the car and we didn't realize a single thing. That's because of the power of repetition.
And there's another one. So here's, like my classic ones are, did I switch off the oven? Did I close the door or did I flush the toilet? Those movements where, you don't think. And then most of the time I did all of the above. But, sometimes it's like this completely non-aware movements. They're so automized. You just do them and you just don't even realize anymore that you're doing them, right?
And we have many of these rituals that we do. In fact, there is close to 600 rituals that any human has in a daily basis. So
Wow.
when we are talking like, for instance, as a male, I have to brush my teeth, I have to open my laptop, I have to maybe make my coffee early in the morning, I have to touch the dog in the same way. And I have noticed that I touch the dog in the same way every single morning when I
Hmm.
wake up. So we have rituals that we repeat, and that's super important because if you have rituals that are already existing, you can use them in order to bend,
Add something.
add something. Exactly, that's the word. Add something on top because we don't like so much. This is a story about notification, or this story when some apps are telling you put a timing for to do certain habits, certain rituals for in your life. It goes into a more natural way if there is less friction, if it is tag along, with an existing habit that you have in your life. So if you want to build a habit, you need to tag it along with something that you are already doing. That doesn't depend on Outlook. It doesn't depend on a specific timing. Is when I do this, your brain, if it is about opening your laptop, when I open the laptop, I will do this. And it goes more natural because there is not overthinking about how to do it. It is the least effort possible for the brain. And this is good for the brain.
I
This
love
is
that. And here's one example that comes up that I think I did intuitively without having all that theory. You know, when I first started getting a little bit into mindfulness, and at that point, it was exercises where you pay attention to your movements in the body. And I'm a horse rider. And you know, when you horse ride, you have to warm up the horse. So the first 5 to 10 minutes, you just walk. So what I started doing is during that period, I was just very conscious about how I feel it in my body. You know, like you move a little bit, you know, soft. You know, I basically used those moments that I anyway would look forward to integrate my tiny mindful moment. You know, now that I say that, I have to bring that back. But, you know, so I can see when you do that intentionally, it can become really powerful, right?
mm, exactly, exactly. And I love the way because this is a super good example. What can we do that we do recurrently, consistently, in order to tag along with a new behavior or something that is healthy for us? I want to get back to my personal story. It became unhealthy because I was having the wrong behaviors. Burnout can be triggered by a trauma. That means an action that happened way in the past, or it can be triggered just by accumulation of bad behaviors that are not aligned with your core principles of life. If you hate your life going to a place where you have to sell, I don't know, pens, and you don't want to sell pens, then or you are in an environment that is super bad with your principle where you are forced to lie, to oversell things. That's what breaks a person. So you can either work it around with habits, or if you know the trauma already, you can start from there, or you need somebody who can help you identify that single action that was in your in the past in order to identify what can be changed, what emotions and what are you carrying, unload your brain from the past. And that's what I had to learn. So I knew exactly the core reason why the thing happened, why I was overworking, why I was so focused on this financial stability. Simply because back in Peru I was super poor.
Hmm.
That's how it happened. That was the trauma, and money became the driver of why I was staying in a place that was painfully toxic for me.
Hmm. Wow.
And from there, I had to work it. Today,
Wow.
I got rid a little bit of this weight of overthinking about financial stability because you can live life in a correct way with less means if you have the right surrounding. For me, it was family.
Wow, that's powerful. And you know, so that reminds me of another book. You see, I'm a book person. It's called The Brain Child. But you know, it's our child is our brain is the same brain, whether we are a child or not. And they talk about also how just being even aware of these trauma, that's the first step to unleash it, right? So one example they used it is for kids sometimes being afraid of dogs. And then they said, like, maybe when they were 2, they had a dog that barked at them, and at 8, they don't even remember that, but they just have this fear that is still there. And just by even finding that moment and just bringing it up
Mm.
and talking about it, and then maybe replacing it by petting a gentle dog, you know, then you can remove it, right? So what I hear you say is one way is having the right habits, but also to make it really powerful, we have to do some digging and find out where some of this is coming from to be able to, you know, to move, to work on the right things that we need to change, right?
Exactly, Maggie. So for me, the most important takeaway is that if we want to change, it's not a problem of motivation or willpower, it's a design problem. But in order to be able to design, you need to know the starting point, which is the self-awareness part. Why? How did we? why do we want to change? What is happening in us when we want to change? Are we changing just because I'm going to look cuter for my Instagram post if I have a shirtless picture, or am I doing it because of health reasons? I want to be there when my daughters are married, or I'm having problems with myself of acceptance. So the self-awareness point, it is the starting point in order to design your own life. You cannot design your own life if you don't know the why. The second is the mental process or processes in order to design these actions that are going to help you around build the new person that you want to be with small actions. But we are talking about not a one-off, like I do an action and I'm going to stay with that action forever. You iterate. There is no secret sauce. It is bullshit when somebody tells
Yes.
you, Maggie, if you want to be awesome this summer, do specifically this keto diet. Go to the Serbian coach in the gym and do X number of hours. It's not going to work for everybody. It has to be something that is specific. So it has to be, you have to learn, in fact, by designing habits, that everything works in iterations. So at one moment, you do it for 10 days. It doesn't work either. You amend part of the habit that you are creating, you ditch it, or you continue.
Mm.
It doesn't happen that you continue forever. I have failed in many habits, but it was a learning for me because now I know what the hell I should not be doing.
Yeah, so it is really agile management, right? Even of your habits. So remind me, how many days, what was it, like 24 days? I mean, there's some rule how many days you need to establish a habit to, the time you should allow to test the habit before you ditch it, right?
So I don't believe about the numbers because when I heard the habit creation part, and some people were saying 90 days, or some people were saying the numbers that you mentioned. I wanted to validate that certain habits, they stick after 10 days. Certain habits stick for a longer period of time, but I have never reached the moment where I had to wait 90 days in order to take a decision if I have to pivot, ditch it, or continue.
Mm.
It always happened in my specific case, in the case of people that I'm working with, is 30 days. But here's the trick: it's not 30 days like in during the 30 days, 1 week I do it and the second week I do it. No, it has to be something. The habit has to be designed in order to create this neural pathway, this big highway where it becomes a routine, a reflex, a little bit like driving, like doing mounting a bike, a reflex that is continuous. So you have to find a habit that you can do daily,
Mm.
not even daily when you are in the office, daily even when you are not in the office.
Mm.
If it is about finding time in order to reconnect with you, is if it is a little bit like doing mini exercise of mindfulness, if it is the 5 push-ups that you want to do in a daily basis, if it is about reconnecting with people when you know that you care about people, but you cannot show it to them. It is about taking the 1 minute during the office, and when you are not in the office, go out in the village and say hi to the Italian guy who is living in besides you.
So this is really, I mean, Atomic Habit, I haven't read yet, but it's definitely on my want to read list. But basically, that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about tiny little habits that are easy to do and to keep doing. So
Mm,
that's one of the design principles, to not make it too big, to make it small enough that you can stick to it for long enough, correct?
exactly. You remember that the brain doesn't like effort.
Hmm.
Every time that, and I want to talk about something that happens very often. And I think we have already discussed once about that end of the year, there is a bunch of people deciding to lose weight because we feel guilty with everything that we have taken it during December. And one thing is that happens with the gyms, and the gyms know about it, is that only 30% of the people who have taken a subscription in the gym will keep on going in March. So they have made a shitload of money because they know about that. We don't know. We believe that we are going to take the decision and we are going to make it. And then we find, because of the friction, the effort, we find good reasons. I don't have the time. I need to take care of my kids. I need to take care of work. I'm traveling that week. Many reasons in order to avoid it. But in fact, they are fake reasons. It is just that it took too many efforts to take the Serbian guy who is the coach, who is going to insult you to continue doing more than 1 hour just to push you to the limits. And we don't like that, unfortunately. So it is better to have things that we can do regardless of the environment, where there is the least friction. Is least friction, that means no impact on money, no impact on taking 1 hour or half an hour to drive to the gym. It fits our lifestyle. So it needs to be short, something that you can do in less than 5 minutes, and even better if it is in 2 minutes. Maggie, I wanted to ask to tell you something. So it is James Clear, the writer of Atomic Habits. He's amazing because he's the first one to succeed to popularize an idea that was done 10 years before by a Stanford professor called B.J. Fogg. BJ Fox, what he did is just created a graphic showing the three things that you need to do in order to create change in your life. So he said, first of all, motivation, so volatile because we are irrational humans. We are not, we, motivation can depend on the effort, on our willingness. So motivation is can be considered, but it's not the most important factor to change. The biggest factor to change is capacity. That means that the effort should be short enough, effortless, in order to create this sequence, consistency for the days. You can change it and make it better afterwards, but it doesn't matter. And the third thing he said, there needs to be a trigger. That means an action, an old habit that we have already to remind you of the new habit. And with these three things, you have a higher chances of success in terms of consistency and big changes.
So in your newsletter, which was the trigger for me to bring you on, because like we need to talk now. So for listeners that haven't read the newsletter yet, I'll drop it into the show notes. You should read it about New Year's resolutions, why some works and don'ts. You actually talked about 4 steps, and I think you now mentioned 3 of them. You know, like the cue, the craving, the response, but also the reward. So just now you haven't touched on the reward, right? So that's
Yeah.
then also something to make sure that you keep going, correct?
So let's get back to the beginning of our conversation. Our brain is mainly managed, is our primal bunch of chemicals going is about fear and pleasure. Pleasure, it is the action of sending a chemical, the dopamine, to our brain in order to give him a message that what I'm doing, I like. Now, dopamine works the best when it's a reward that is not in 30 days, not in 6 months, but it's a reward that's immediate. Something that is going to help the brain consistently create addiction to an action. We humans, we all have addictions. Whatever it is, that's why we have pleasure, by the way, because if we don't like it, we would stop. So that's this good and sad reality. So what we are saying is that whenever you do an action, it is important in order to create this consistency to reward our brain. And this reward can be something that we are tagging along with something that we enjoy. Like for instance, if I create a habit that I have to do in the morning, is that I will prepare when I prepare my coffee, I will do this. And then when I finish that, I will drink my coffee because I wanted my craving, but I want to get things done. So if I need to fix the 3 priorities of my day, oh, by the way, this is real. I only fix 3 major things that I need to finish in the day. And these things mix personal and business side. 3 things that I'm going to be happy about. If I do more, it's good. But if I do the three, I'm going to be satisfied so that I can sleep good at night. So I reward myself with a coffee. If it is something that we enjoy sweets, it can be. Yes, treat yourself with sweets. It works with most of the animals that have a developed brain. So it doesn't work, by the way, with crocodiles. I read about it. But with dogs, it works, right? That you give them a treat and they will follow. We are very similar. So we associate an action, if there is a trigger, with something that is going to remind us in our brain, and then we do the action, the effort that is going to be small, and then we need to reward it. Don't reward it with something that is harmful. If you are doing some exercise, don't go and replace the 50 calories that you have lost with 100.
So here, okay, this is really inspiring. So now I'm thinking, so one of the habits I try to establish, and I'm really struggling, particularly when I worked a lot, when I'm tired, so I want to not touch my phone, like social media and all that stuff, before basically only 9 to 9, so not before 9 and not after 9 p.m.
Mm.
And I'm not very successful with it. So now because I guess I get all the usual rewards from it, to connect with people, to get some inspiration, whatever it might be. So now I'm thinking, and that will be my challenge for this week, how I can give myself another reward, how can I basically make it more fun not to do it or have some reward? I mean, I'm just trying to put it into action, what you just said, but I'm not quite sure yet how to do it.
That I love the fact that you have mentioned fun, because then that comes this dimension of gamification of the action. So we have two things that we may want to try. One, if we have said that in order to do a new habit, you have to make it easier, this time you have to make it more difficult in order to get rid of the habit. So that means that if your telephone, as of 9 o'clock, stays in the kitchen, stays in your daughter's room, well, without her using it, it's a little bit like we have to stand up and go around in order to pick it up. It cannot be close to you. And that happens to me, when we say to ourselves the bullshit, yeah, but I need the alarm, buy an alarm. You don't need the telephone to have the alarm to wake up in the morning. The other thing is that if we are thinking about something that you can do complementary to that, is the story of the reward, this gamification stuff. If you are somebody who likes, for instance, waking up early in the morning, like at 6 o'clock in the morning, if you are successful about reaching your target of not touching from 9 to 6 your telephone, then you can touch it at 6 o'clock. But if you have done it once, that means that you are going to delay the pleasure. You can do it, at 6:30. If I fail, I will open it at 6:30 or at 7 if I touch it twice, or for every minute that I was online. You have a mini punition that you don't like, because we crave it. That we cannot get rid of that thing. Even myself, sometimes I go with in Instagram, and I know that it's not work. It is just watching funny things from Latin America, because they always make me laugh, my people.
Or what I came across on Instagram, but I'm pretty disciplined about that one, but it's so cute. It's this guy who plays the guitar and he sings. And first of all, it's really nice how he sings, but he sings it to animals, like wild animals. And it's like you have lions that come and sit down. I
Oh,
mean,
nice.
it's really easy to get addicted to that. So I'm resisting. Look, Ivan, I could go on forever as usual, but let's, because I want to get to my quick fire burst question. But before we go there, um, so this is the time of the year where people will look back and they will look forward. So what could be a thing that listeners, now knowing all the theory you just shared and knowing that the gyms are going to make a lot of money with you, knowing you won't come back after March. So as people get into that process,
Mm.
what's something to be aware of, or what's like one tip you have for people to avoid or to do this year around, to make sure that some of their changes stick?
Maggie, there is something I was thinking about specifically that people don't. I have been preaching that the brain doesn't like effort. So the only thing that can help you out in order to change something specifically is to take an action. Now, you need to know there is a process. This guy, BJ Fox, the Stanford professor, created a 6 or 7 steps process. You can you can use a little bit AI for once. Open Gemini. Start telling him, I want to use habit formation. It's called habit formation. Is the real the real word. Tell me the process. Explain me in easy words. That's he will give you the 6 or 7, or maybe he will take some of the James Clear. They are very similar. There is just a little bit of things that change here and there, but it doesn't matter. Both are good. I'm not telling you go and buy the book of James Clear because it's an effort and it costs $20 or more even. So go open Gemini, ask him for the process. Tell him what is your intention. I want to lose weight. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to be more approachable at work. How can I design a small habit, or give me some proposals of what I can do. Ask me questions. So they ask you questions in order to create and do this little habit. Then creating an A4, write a tracking, because you need, in order to that it happens, you need to have consistency. A tracking, that means you write the habit that you want to create. For instance, every time that I'm doing my coffee, I will take 2 minutes to write my 3 priorities for the day, and this should include personal and a business. And when I'm done writing, I can drink my coffee. That's a habit. And then it starts putting numbers from 1 to 30, let's say. And every time that you achieve that, do a check. It is important that to visualize what is the how consistent you are. If you
And I
fail,
like that it's off like screen, because I think there is the power of the screen and the technology and all of that, but some of it is also about having tangible things in our hands that helps. The other way I do it, look, I have this. Not sure if you can see this. This is
yes.
like weekly planning, where, by the way, you also have to have priorities. Hang on, priorities. And here you have a habit tracker.
That's beautiful. And that
Which
is online and for free, right, Maggie?
I think I ordered that somewhere for like $10. I mean, it's but
But
you
there
can
is for
probably
free.
download it somewhere as well. Yeah.
Yes. So it is important to be able to track your consistency and to understand why it failed, because it means that you may want to redesign your habits. Imagine that sometimes I'm drinking coffee, sometimes I don't have the time to drink coffee. So you need to design it with something that is happening every single day.
Mm.
Track it. Start with 10 days. Start with a habit that doesn't take you even 2 minutes. After 10 days, just do the checking. Pivot, I do something else. Ditch, I forget about it, it's not working, or continue.
I have a follow-up question there, because now what I'm realizing, because I think part of me not tracking, like succeeding in all of my habits, is I think I have too many. So basically you build one habit at a time, right? So you do the 2 minutes, you build the habit. Once you established and automized one habit, then you go to the next. Or how many habits can you build at the same time without overwhelming yourself?
When you start with at least for 30 days with one. I mean, for 30 days, try to be focused on one, because you are starting and you are trying to understand the patterns that define habit. How do you design good habits? After that, you can start stacking habits. My morning is made of 5 habits. If I go for more, it's ambitious, and I have been failing for with more. 5 habits, total time 30 minutes. But I know exactly when to do it in the morning, because I have this freedom time at 6 o'clock in the morning where my daughter is not awake yet, my wife is not yelling yet, where I can be focused on myself. And
Oh.
that's how you start taking control of your life and stop believing these successful people who, with efforts, Elon Musk, whoever you, with efforts, they succeeded. First of all, that happens with a low minority, less than 1% of the population. Secondly, we don't know the number of times that they had to reconstruct or the initial set of conditions in order for this person to change the world or change themselves.
So first of all, respect for getting up at 6. When do you go to sleep? Because we're also supposed to have 8 hours sleep, right? And
Maggie, I go early. 9:30, I'm already
oh, wow.
wanting to sleep. So by 10 o'clock, I should be sleeping, which is amazing compared to my time in the corporate life where I had around 4 hours of sleep. And it wasn't because I was working, it was because I was stressed.
Wow. Because I heard that so often, this whole getting up early, like, and I just can't be bothered at this point. But I have heard it, like if you can put in that extra hour in the morning where you really have time for yourself, but respect. And I heard it as a success model from many successful people, that's part of the secret.
It works as long as you know where to stop. It doesn't mean that if you start at 5 o'clock in the morning, you need to finish at 8 o'clock in the evening. No, for me, it means I will try to avoid meetings after 4 o'clock in the afternoon because my daughter is coming. And the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is because family first, taking care of myself second.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's the beauty of self-employment, I guess, that you can design it around that.
Mhm.
So, Ivan, this was amazing. Let's move to quick fire burst question, and then we'll have one wrapping up question where you can share a concrete small step for people to do tomorrow. But before we go there, are you ready for the quick fire burst?
Oof, you make me nervous, Maggie.
No, this is fun. We'll see how it goes. So, as most listeners know, I have 7 questions for you. The challenge is to answer with one word, or let's say with one concise idea to really, to get to the point. So, let's go.
Yep.
So, can you please share one belief you had to drop to live your way?
Hmm. I have mentioned it. Financial security is a must. No ways. It's not a must.
Wow, beautiful. A place that cracked something open in you.
What do you mean by crack something open in you?
Like a place that inspired you. I mean, you talked before that, you now found your place not in Geneva, but where you're living now. So just a place that opened something up in you, like the place where you found home, or like just something that really inspired you.
Okay, I want to change. It's not going to be the place that I call home. It's going to be the place where I, I get awe in terms of people and nature. Is a city in Peru called Cusco. Beside of this Machu Picchu thingy that is quite famous, I love this place and the people.
I've been there a long time ago. Yes, I can really relate to that. So one thing you had to unlearn.
Um, being monodimensional. That means that fixing priorities based on just one dimension.
Monodimensional. I learned a new word. Great. You're non-negotiable right now.
Uh, make time for family, learn, and take care of myself daily.
I love it. The boldest risk that paid off.
It is a little bit risky because it doesn't matter why, but saying no to collaborating in ideas that are great, but simply do not match my objectives in terms of taking care of myself. Like if it's going to make me stress, because I feel sometimes if it is a stressful exercise, I will say no. I know that I'm missing opportunities, but that's the way I decided to live.
Well, that's really powerful because you're so clear on your non-negotiables.
Mm.
So if there is a shiny object that sounds amazing, but it's potentially violating your non-negotiables, it's just a no. I think that's
But
really
it took me
powerful.
time to learn that thing,
Oh
Maggie.
yeah,
It took me time.
that's
That's
hard.
a pity.
Yeah, well, we all sometimes have to learn the hard way, don't we? If it doesn't hurt, sometimes it's probably there's some behavioral science behind that, that if it doesn't hurt, it's harder to learn. Um, one word for your leadership or your life in this chapter.
Um, yeah, it sounds a little bit like with flowers, but it's about caring. When I meet someone, I imagine in the 5 first seconds if I could do something for someone within 1 year that can I impact the person that I have met within 1 year with something positive because I have noticed that they want specifically something. So for me, I call it caring, but I'm pretty sure that there is a better word for that.
Oh, that's a beautiful word. I think we should stick to caring. I like that. So what is the ripple you hope your story creates?
Hmm. Ah, it's about something that is quite powerful in human beings. It's about removing fears of not being perfect. I want that my story resonates with people and says it doesn't have to be perfect. Everything is could be an iteration. I'm working towards a goal instead of making the goal now. So removing the fears of failure, just know that no action, it means staying in the same state. Trying new actions and learning how to spot that needs to be improved, it is 10 times better.
Hmm. You know what comes up is, and you're from Peru, and I think the guy is Mexican. You know, those Los Cuatro Acuerdos, you know, from Manuel Ruiz, I think, like the four agreements, I think it's called in English. If
Uh-huh.
you don't know it, look it up. You know, I came across it
I'm
at
going to look it up.
school of my kids. So basically, it's those four philosophies, and you know, it's loads of them are similar to Buddhism and other spiritual philosophies. So it's basically four agreements with yourself. And one of them is to be the best you can today. And that's also on the acknowledgement, some bests are not very great. Sometimes there a day where, you're just tired or whatever. And the best you do on that day might not be particularly great, but that's the best you can do that day. And that's okay. And then maybe tomorrow you had super sleep and you're motivated and then your best is amazing. But to just allow yourself to do the best you can do today. So look it up. I think you'll like it.
I love the fact is allowing yourself to do the best. So that means that you have tried it. It doesn't mean that I'm lazy or I'm weak. I'm trying. On the way of doing something that is my best today because of X condition it didn't happen, and I forgive myself and I move on and I start again and reborn again and give another opportunity to be closer to the person that I want to be. I love that, Maggie. That was
Exactly. Yeah.
inspiring.
Yeah, I think you like it. And I actually I have this whole philosophy whenever I can, I read the book in the original language. So read it in Spanish. It's more powerful in Spanish.
Los cuatro acuerdos.
Yes. So thanks so much for playing along, sharing all your wisdom. This has been so rich and deep. And, I'm always learning so much. So now if listeners are intrigued, they want to learn more about behavioral science, or they just want to put their 2026 goals in a better way. So what is the very first small step? And you shared already many ideas, but what could people do today?
Yeah. Today, I mean, I know that we have discussed about the process in a very broad way. Go and just go to Gemini and type what is the good prompt to have the process in place. Put the seed of your first intention. Do it now. You don't have to wait to find time because this is like a discovery about yourself. Go and try it now.
Exactly. Do it right now when you stop listening. I like that. And you know what?
Exactly.
I also check, this is something that is so useful. I'm almost sure somebody has already done it. So I look it up if there are any GPTs or something. I mean, somebody for sure has already developed some prompts. But even for listeners, even don't wait for me to look it up. Just plug it into whatever AI you're using and exactly get those steps
Yeah.
and just start with one, right?
Exactly, Maggie. And if people wants to know a little bit more about behavioral science and have a chat, I'm always available. I make sure that during the week there is at least 2 hours that are devoted just to connect with people, answer their questions, and that's part of my day-to-day life because I feel that if we want to have impact, we need to give ourselves to give this time for others. So don't forget, connect with me in LinkedIn, Ivan Palomino, and I let's have a conversation.
And follow Ivan. He has a newsletter which is called Hack. What is it? Hack Culture? Hack
The Growth Hacking Culture Podcast.
Podcast and newsletter. Because,
Yes.
just follow and get inspiration or reach out. I think it's so generous of you to offer that, but also it's your caring leadership at this chapter of your life. So here we go. You're walking the talk. That's amazing.
Thank you very
Ivan,
much, Maggie.
thanks so much. This was amazing. Thanks for taking the time. I'm sure it'll resonate with the listeners. So thanks and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Bye.
That's it for today. If this stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Do something, anything, today, right now. Take one small intentional step toward more freedom, flow, and fun. And see where the ride takes you. If this hit home, follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. That's how we ripple this energy further. Want to go deeper? Head over to mindset/mastery.ch for coaching, tools, and next steps. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and keep playing it by your rules. Bye for now.